Well, in that case, everyone, welcome back to the Unlock Podcast, episode 325 or so. Which
18.
is
18.
It's 18?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Most likely.
Whatever. Welcome to the Unlock Podcast. It's roughly episode 18. Today, well, we're not going to get into that quite yet. I should probably introduce you guys. Do you guys need to be introduced?
This introduction this intro is great. You're doing fantastic. Keep it going.
Not as good as your golf game.
This is as good as... All right. That's out of both of you. So the guy with the ridiculous accent is Chad Lingefeld out of...
I was like, that's a rude thing to say about Tony.
Obviously. And and the dopey one in the middle, that's Tony Hokinson from, oh golly gosh, I think that's Minneapolis. Just so everyone's aware, that's how you introduce a podcast.
Oh,
yeah.
That really nailed it.
Nailed that one.
Well, I've kind of planned this out because I'm super excited about today's episode. Because
really, I couldn't tell. You were very melancholy in that introduction.
I am very excited, Tony, because this is the episode where we get to talk about all the things that I've done right and all the things that you guys have screwed up.
Huh. Yeah. Well, this will be a short podcast.
Yes.
And that's all we've got for today.
Yes. We're talking about our biggest wins and our biggest failures.
Yes. And also, by way of introduction, we are three business owners from North Carolina, Minnesota, and Canada. And we've joined our forces to create this podcast called Unlocked. And it is unlocking the behind the scenes around running a locksmith and security business. We have a very niche genre that we're focused on. And we're just trying to build our insights. We're all three trying to build businesses that are bigger than just us, that they can run on their own, that they can thrive on their own and continue to grow and scale on their own. And that we're just kind of a part of that growth process. So that's why we're here. And that's the point of our conversation.
That's a lot more boring than my introduction.
That was the point of the introduction where you and I do a terrible job and Chad has to try to clean it up a little bit for us.
Listening to this and they're nodding their head.
Yeah.
They're nodding their head. They're like, yeah, that was boring. Put Lars's introduction back in.
And so you can find out more about us at our website called unlockedpodcast.com, where you can subscribe and watch videos and, click our referral links. We don't have this. Okay.
Yes, the heavy referral links.
Yeah, back at it. Okay.
Yeah.
You can get back to what you were saying, Lars.
All right. So, well, I've been 13 years. Tone, you've been how long in this?
10.
And Chad?
A cool 21 years this year.
A cool 21 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, are you old? So, 21, 10, 13. Surely we have done a few things right, obviously, because we're still in business. And we've done a few things that weren't great.
Yep. Made major mistakes.
Yeah, the occasional mistake. I don't want to say major. The nice thing, of course, is if you don't focus on the mistakes, they basically just didn't happen.
Yeah.
That's how it works, right?
Yeah.
But, Tone, it's always my favorite throwing it to you first, because I know you spend a lot of time preparing for this kind of stuff. But, Tone, let's start on the high side. Give me something. Give me a win. What is one of the most impressive, one of the things you're most proud of that you've done with the company over the last 10 years?
I would say taking risks. And when I say by that, you two are going to look at me like, oh, you
risky.
Didn't take a risk.
Oh, boy.
Roll the dice?
Yeah.
And you weren't sure the outcome?
So my risk is, yes, exactly. So getting into acquisitions and buying businesses and mm-hmm. my biggest success is also probably the biggest mistake in that taking the risk in acquiring businesses, not really knowing what I was doing and figuring it out. Because I learned from that. Mm-hmm. And our business would not be where it was today if I didn't say, hey, I don't know really what we're doing with this acquisition, but I'm going to acquire a business and it looks like it'll be a good deal and I'll figure it out along the way. Having confidence in myself, I guess, is the biggest success.
Yeah.
Of knowing that I can figure it out no matter what we're doing. And taking that risk to start acquiring businesses and not being afraid of failing.
How many have you acquired?
3.
So you've got like Bloomington Security or Assured Security, whatever it's called today. There's the pink and the teal one. So, but you have Minneapolis Lock and Key.
Really glad you explained that, because that was not even close to factual.
I don't know.
That was nailed that one.
Yeah,
nailed it.
So it's something.
So
like
we
that.
started as Bloomington
somewhere.
Security Solutions,
okay.
And we acquired Minneapolis Lock and Key. Then we acquired a company called ESS, and then we acquired a company called Assured Security and changed our name to Assured Security.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, you did. But
I just remember the acronym of Assured Security.
Yes, AS. Yes,
that's one of them. Yeah.
So yes, that was my, I think, biggest success was being confident in myself.
Excited about it. That was an exciting success.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell when you're serious and being smug.
That was sarcastic.
Yeah.
So you were excited about that success. That was a good thing.
I had
sure.
success.
Yeah, I was not planning
fun.
to talk about successes today, so I'm a little thrown off guard here. The episode was supposed to be 3 biggest failures, so I was, all geared up and ready to go to talk about that.
Well, I thought you wanted to be positive to start the podcast, Tom.
We have to have 3 failures?
That's what Lars said, yeah.
I've had 3 failures since I got up this morning.
It's funny, kind of tossing back to the culture index episode. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I appreciate about my culture index is that I can fail fast and I move past those mistakes and I don't really ponder them that much.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is I've made plenty of mistakes. I just don't
remember them.
Well, yeah. So I was thinking this morning, I was like, okay, we're doing a podcast on 3 biggest mistakes. What are the mistakes I've made? And I was like,
and Tony said, I don't make mistakes.
Seriously, I was like, I make plenty of them, but I don't think about them. If I make a mistake, it's like, okay, what did I learn from it? Let's move forward. I think very much so in the, what do I want our company to look like in the future mentality? And I rarely think about what did we fail on, because it just doesn't.
Your company's just been perfect. Nothing's ever gone wrong.
Oh no, it's done many terrible things. I just choose to ignore those and move on.
Well, can you maybe tell us a little bit about one?
Okay, so back
situation. What happened? What'd you get through?
So back to the acquisitions. One of our mistakes with that acquisition was I did not create a plan for that at all. So yes, we took the risk and we said, hey, I can figure this out. The consequence to that was we did not have a plan. We were not, I knew I could figure it out and we figured it out, but it created chaos along the way. So my biggest mistake, number one, was not doing the acquisitions, but not having a plan for doing the acquisitions. So
yeah, I would guess naturally you spent, you were pretty good at figuring out the value of it, kind of negotiating a price, coming up with that, part of the art of the deal, because I know you're very calculated. And then you're like the dog that caught its tail.
Yes.
And then you're like, oh shit, now what?
Yes. I actually...
Did that just make us a rated R podcast?
I hope not.
Oh, baby.
I'll have to click that explicit.
Sorry.
I'm just kind of hoping for that rating, but
Yeah. Minnesota R rated. Oh, darn. Poopy darn. Shucks.
Oh, boy.
Anyways, I remember actually having a conversation with you, Lars, 4 or 5 years ago, and you were talking about where our business was. We just acquired a couple of businesses and we had 30 employees, and you're like, well, I was in your shoes about 2-3 years ago, and hold on tight because you're in for some fun. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, oh boy, were you right?
Yeah.
Get
don't
that.
Snip that.
Clip that, Beef. If you're listening, clip that. It's a new intro to all of our podcasts.
Overall, the not planning for growth, not being intentional about growth, that is something that we are now being very intentional about, and it is harder. Why are you
be intentional about it?
And yeah, you're talking about, you just document it more, because obviously you had a plan how this was going to work, but you just
no.
Oh, I thought you meant you didn't write it down; it was all in your head.
No.
You just wrote the check and you're like, oh, now what?
Well, no, okay, I knew. Okay, so to your point, you were actually somewhat right at the beginning there. Where
I got that part.
You're like, you must have figured it out financially that it was going to work. And that's what I did. I looked at it and I said, okay, financially, this makes sense. I did not think about it operationally or strategically one bit. I was just like, hey, this company's profitable. This company's profitable. Well, they'll just work out. And I did not plan how those would come together.
Yes. Well, yeah.
And that was a problem.
and then we looked at your org chart.
Yeah. No, and so
I
like
haven't made any mistakes. I just acquired a business. No idea what I'm going to do. Oh, okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Well, again, no, I knew it was going to work out, and that's the thing. Like, it wasn't. You guys, give me a hard time and say I don't take risks, and to me, it wasn't a risk because financially, I looked at it and I was like, this is going to be fine. But I did not take the time to plan through how that was going to work.
Yeah. So you would suggest next time you would maybe think about a plan and getting something on the paper, maybe a little bit earlier. Yeah. Or are you just going to wing it again?
Oh, no. Next time it'll be much more structured and organized, and it'll be the dots will be in a row far in advance. So from that mistake, I have now learned that anytime I'm trying to grow or make a decision, I need to plan what that's going to look like. And like you said, again, at the time I really had no idea. I just figured they, you got company A, company B, they'll become company C, no problem.
How hard could it be?
But I would say that was an advantage.
That whole 4-year process of rebranding, right?
Yeah.
No.
No,
because the first acquisition we didn't rebrand.
Oh
God. Yeah.
How would you ever know it was going on?
So what were some of the costs? Like what?
Chad, I think today you were actually more smug than Lars, and that's saying something.
Come on, stick with us. Here we go. All right.
I don't like the implications of that tone, but tell me. So this was a mistake. What were the costs? Because I'm thinking, okay, people that are listening to this, they might do an acquisition. If they don't have it planned out, what were the actual costs to you? Not necessarily like dollar wise, but I mean, what were the problems that happened? Was it just mass chaos?
Stress on employees, and for people that are not used to change, it was like a constant change 24/7 because it was like, okay, let's try to figure this out. Nope, that didn't work. Let's try to figure this out. Nope, that didn't work. Let's figure this out. And it was very reactive. Like, here's where we are. Oh crap, we should have done this. And it felt like we were playing catch up as opposed to a much more controlled pace of here's what we should be doing. Here's what we plan to do, and then let's follow that plan.
Right.
And this is your biggest mistake, or this is a win? Where did I got lost?
This was the mistake which tailored into the win.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So the win was the acquisitions and taking risks, and then the
mistake was
was making the acquisition with absolutely no idea what he was doing.
Okay, perfect.
I wouldn't say that wasn't a mistake. It was just I would have done it differently.
Your ID is showing, Tony. It wasn't a mistake. It was just a small, nuanced disagreement with the right way.
I wouldn't have I would say that it made me a better leader today. Like, it made me it made me understand the impacts of actually needing that plan today. Yeah. Like, if I hadn't done acquisitions, I would not have realized the importance of having a plan, and our business may be even more disorganized today because of that.
Well, I think that's probably going to be a centralized theme with all of our biggest mistakes is it has turned into a lesson that we've learned that we don't want to repeat.
Yeah.
Chad,
what's up?
Tell us something. You screw up more than anyone I know.
Yeah.
And I say that that's like a badge of honor to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, you what is it? The popcorn machine? You got 1,000 ideas, and every once in a while, one of them's good.
Yeah. It's just it's an odds game. So you keep throwing more against the wall, and occasionally something actually.
You throw a bunch of 3D printers against the wall, and eventually one of them sticks. For those that don't know, LockDock Security in North Carolina owns more 3D printers and laser engravers than any locksmith company in the world.
Well,
should
mean.
Does.
Yeah. To clarify that, we have a division of our organization called the Lab, which is all about innovation. And we've got a really cool team over there that we can toss any challenge at and figure out how to either make it work, implement it, or realize that it was a really bad idea. And then we toss it out. So that's why we have invested in those things.
Is that in case the IRS is listening? Is that what that was?
It's real research and development happening.
It was real R&D IRS. Yeah. If you're in case Doge shows up at LockDock.
All right, back to it.
Give me a win, give me a loss, give me something.
Okay, so one of the biggest mistakes, I've jotted down 4 here because I want to be an overachiever. The first one was I got kicked off of a large project. There was a 8 years ago, maybe roughly around that time, there was a large multifamily housing project that was going up, and we got pulled in because we had already had some connections with the development company, and we were 2/3 of the way through the process. They were breaking ground, building the building, and I'd been involved in all of the preliminary meetings. At that time, I was primarily responsible for sales. I was also primarily responsible for dispatch and running the business. And this was
sounds like a good decision on your part.
This was the first 6-figure project that we had gotten involved with. So it was like $170,000 worth of work. And as it started progressing and the complications got larger and my time was being stretched and pressed in other areas of the business, I would prioritize other things. I would prioritize the urgent in front of the important. And so I kept pushing this off. And then one morning I woke up to an email from the project manager for that project. And he says, basically, regret to inform you that we're pulling you out of this contract based off of lack of communication, and we're going to be using a different vendor. And so, there was a lot of plans that I had around that size project. Everything was moving in this great direction. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's gone. And the biggest part of all of that is I felt like a huge failure because I had tried to do too many things and didn't ask for help and didn't stay on top of it. So I was mad at myself. I was pissed off at myself. And I'd already told everybody in the company that we had this thing working.
We had this big win.
Correct. Yeah. And so
you got egg on your face. Yeah.
Yep. So then I had to go in front of our team the next Wednesday morning. At that time, it was probably 15, 20 people. And I had to say, hey, I screwed up. Here's this mistake that I made, and this is the loss that it cost us, the lost opportunity that it cost us. And it was frustrating. I was mad. I'd try to do everything I could to get it back, but it was too late, right? It was one of those things like that mistake was made and there was no coming back from it.
Right.
And it really impacted me as a human, as a leader in our organization because of the failure associated with and all those things.
That's a gut punch for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, big gut punch. But the flip side of that, the upside was that it really transformed, one, how I process priorities, staying on top of the important, and getting people and hiring people to do the urgent. And that was a trajectory in hiring. Probably, I can't remember the exact timeline, but I'm pretty sure it was a trajectory in hiring Nathan, who was ultimately started handling our dispatch for us. Right. And then it was a precursor to having a dedicated salesperson that was responsible to stay on top of that communication.
Right.
It's moved us in a great trajectory past that, but that moment is one that is hard for me to forget about, right? That is one failure that has stuck with me. It's not that I'm reliving it every day, but when we start to make decisions, there are factors that come back into play that say, this is a transformational decision or transformational action that happened that caused us to make a big
change. And that's, I think you're referencing some personal growth here, the urgent versus the important. That's a huge and critical understanding of, that's not just business. I think that's just life in general.
Yeah.
We get so caught up with what's in front of us that, we forget the big picture. And that's, it's a cool story because we're sitting here and, Chad's on the stage all the time at different conferences and sits on advisory boards and he's on really cool podcasts and things like that. But hearing the failures is what I always like to hear about because, you look at it now and it's like, okay, these are guys that are having some success, but what built it up? What was kind of the origin story? It was, for me, I had a conversation with a guy I call my uncle. He's not actually a blood relative, but close enough. And, he's had wildly successful in the business world, and all I've ever heard about, this guy, he's amazing. And so I called him, this was about 10 years ago now. I called him. I was like, hey, can we have a coffee? He's like, yeah, I can, we'll make time for this. Sat down. I was like, I've heard all the stories about how amazing you are and how successful you've been. I was like, but I don't really care. Like, what'd you screw up? And he just kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, I don't get to talk about that much. And, he talked about, the family aspect. He said, I didn't get to see my family grow up. I didn't have that relationship. I was so focused on being successful in one aspect of my life that I'm married to, a different person now than is my kid's mom. So it was interesting hearing that. And I just love these origin stories because, sometimes we get so caught up and, it's good for us. I like having a good laugh. We're having some success, but I also like having a good laugh at some of the stuff that absolute bonehead moves. I've got, for me, I'll tell a quick one because it's not hugely impactful. It was just one of those moments that
you just made me think of a fifth one. So I just wrote, I got to figure out which of the three.
You've only made 5 mistakes your entire life.
No, plenty more. It triggered something, but go ahead.
Actually, one of my favorite exercises, we used to, a couple of years ago, we had to shut it down because we had a little too much rum. But I'll get to that. It was it was Christmas Eve. We usually were open till noon. And so we do a year in review, but instead of all the wins, we discuss, everyone gets to pick what was their biggest screw up of the year. And we have eggnog and, we had a little rum, and then one of us had to take an Uber home because we had a little too much rum, but that's besides the point.
You were smart enough to take an Uber.
Yeah. But it was, anyway, it was a good exercise because it allowed everyone to kind of get it off their chest and like, oh yeah, I really screwed that one up. But the one that I brought up was we were in a situation, this is years ago, we're in a situation where we had 2 people, we wanted to, we're kind of in that about 15 people, I'd say, maybe 20 people. Mm-hmm. That's about the size of a business. You start getting that mid-level management, right? I think it's exactly what Chad was just talking about, kind of bringing in that second level of decision makers. So there were 2 guys that were both, kind of qualified that should have been in that role.
Yeah.
And I wanted one of them was going to be better at it, but I also didn't want the other one to, feel alienated.
Yeah.
Or I didn't want him to be disappointed, right? I didn't want to get disengagement, any of that stuff. So I thought, okay, well, we'll put one guy in this role and then we'll offer the other guy a position that was like more responsibility, came with a title, but it was no more money. Right. And I was like, the offer was so bad that I was like,
I can imagine that he turned it down.
Exactly. Like there's no way you'd say yes to this. And he still said yes. And I was like, but for me, I was like, okay, the biggest learning lesson here is I had my motivation, and there's a psychological term for this. I don't remember what it is, but what I thought was important, I imposed on him.
Yep. Ooh.
And then thought, okay, I'm gonna
projection.
Another one I can write down.
I assumed I knew what the answer would be.
Yep.
Because it's logical. And I think, Chad, you talked about last week about what is it? What you're saying might not be heard by the other, or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. Right. So I just assumed I knew what this guy was going to answer.
That was a great example of that. So sometimes what you say doesn't always get clearly communicated to the audience.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something about something at some point to someone. But, for me, it was just that learning lesson that, okay, my values aren't going to be the same as everyone else's. And, that actually led me down the path to understanding my belief that I've, kind of gathered from a whole bunch of different areas, that people are generally motivated by one of 3 things. One's flexibility, one's ego and status, and one's money. You can't have all 3, but people are motivated by one of those 3 things. And I was motivated by money. He was motivated by status and ego. So he didn't get any more money. He got less flexibility, but he got a title of manager. And he's like, yep, that's what I'm taking. I was like, dude, this is a terrible offer. This is like one of those fantasy football trades that you get mad at the other person. Like, this is a terrible offer. And he still said yes. So that was my learning lesson. It wasn't a huge failure. I mean, we worked through it, but it stuck with me. And that was probably 13 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Here's what I think we should do, guys, because that was our first. Everybody went through one. We've got a couple more that we're going to do, right, for additional failures or mistakes. Let's take a pause here.
Okay.
And we'll pick this up in the next episode, because what I want with us to do is to give a quick tease of what the next failure is, so that people will come back.
Okay.
I think this is a terrible idea.
Oh, this is going to be a great idea.
This is a good idea.
This is your 6th mistake.
No, I already had the 6th one, so that'll be 7. 7 bad teas. So mine is a story around a really bad firing that I was responsible for, and how it changed the trajectory of how we handle employee discipline and correction.
Okay. Tony, do you want to give us a little tease?
A little tease,
Tony. Oh, Tony's not ready for a tease. Okay, think for a minute, Tone. I'll tell you
nothing.
I've got
this. Just totally. You're just upsetting my high C completely. I'm going to short circuit, and it's going to be.
Tony's little sauna's getting hot over there.
Yep.
So my little tease, which I think is a weird way to say this, but it's actually also around a firing or a bad termination.
Yes. Okay. We can compare.
It's it's amazing.
Tony, do you have any bad firing stories that you're going to have on your list?
Not necessarily stories, but yeah, my next one, sure. We'll talk about hiring and firing practices. So.
A bad firing.
A bad
hiring. A really bad hiring. Tony's got a lot of those.
Tease me, Tony. Tease me.
I don't. He's completely throwing me off course here. This is just...
All right. While Tony is recovering in the sauna, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back next week. But in the meantime, we do want you to subscribe so that you get the next episode alert. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, make sure that you hit the subscribe button so that you can be in the know for when the next episode launches. We try to drop them every Thursday. The guy that distributes them sometimes is a little slack on that, but it's mostly every Thursday.
When he's playing golf.
Mostly every Thursday morning when it's ready. Also, our website, unlockedpodcast.com. You can find out all the information there, blog post, and information about where you can listen to the podcast, which assumably you've already figured out if you're listening to the podcast. Yeah, just remembered that. And there's video version as well if you want to jump on there and see why.
I'm not even sure assumably is a word, is it?
Yeah, Google it. All right, well, Google that while we
presumptively. Okay, well, presumptively see you here next week.
All right, let's we'll yeah, it's next week, but we're going to be wearing the same clothes.
Yeah.
So, right. Tony, sauna.
Uncross your arms, Tony. You look grumpy.
Yeah, you look angry.
Yeah.
He's very frustrated right now. Hopefully by next week, Tony has calmed down and he's good to go. So we'll see you next time on the coffee break. No, this isn't the coffee break.
Oh, this is the worst exit ever. Hopefully this all gets edited out.
This is good.
Unlock podcast.